which I'm sure everyone remembers. This was an advertisement that the company Silicon Graphics produced around the time of Jurassic Park. So their computer workstations were used to do a lot of the computer animation and the rendering of the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. And so there's this wonderful kind of mix of the making of the film as represented by a dinosaur in a kind of construction frame, this business here, with these are almost like those men that we saw underneath the stage. So these workers below are trying to figure out how to erect this dinosaur. And then this is all brought to you by this technology company called Silicon Graphics. And of course, the dinosaur is kind of this big, scary beast. So you combine all of these wonderful elements of what a good story is. The fact that the story has to be written, someone needs to make the story. There needs to be this sort of medium, this sort of technology, whether it's writing or the printing press or it's film and computers, in order to create this important element that forms the center of the drama. And this is a special effects magazine that's been had an issue focused on how they actually did the special effects for the film. And of course, I mean, we know this, but it's important to say because we're trying to understand how this all works. The better you can create the special effect, the more compelling that prop, that story prop, that element that helps tell your story, the better it can be, the more effective is your communication of your idea. Another great example is this film by Stanley Kubrick that was written by Arthur C. Clarke called 2001. This film came out in 1968 or 69, I believe. I can't remember the exact year. A really very, very important film for a number of reasons. It was a very important science fiction film. It defined a genre of science fiction. And sort of, has had a lot of cultural and artistic significance behind it. What I find most interesting about the film is that the filmmaker, Stanley Kubrick, a famous director, he actually worked with real scientists and real engineers in order to help create this vision of what it might be like to travel in space. And it's important to note that the film was being produced in the mid to late 1960s. So this was before there was before people had actually traveled extensively in space. So at the time, it was the space race, as we refer to it. So when the United States and Russia were racing each other to see who was going to be the first nation to put a man on the moon. And while all that's happening, Stanley Kubrick is creating this film, science fiction film, about space travel. And it's not just a story. He has to create a visual story, so show what space travel would be like. And the way that it was the nature of this director, Stanley Kubrick, to really obsess over the details. Like, what would things look like? He didn't want the film to look like a comic book or to lack the kind of integrity that you might expect from a very good, very convincing depiction of what space travel would be like. So for him, it was important to actually work with people who were also who had some expertise. And so these scientists and engineers sometimes also happen to be people who are working with NASA, the space agency in the United States. So they had quite direct experience. And a number of them, working on the film became a way for them to actually understand the engineering work that they were doing better. So the film became a way for them to prototype some of their ideas and sort of work through them. This is Arthur C. Clarke, who was he essentially wrote the story that the film was based on. One of the curious aspects of this was that they had to create these interfaces, these visual displays for the computers. But it's quite interesting because there were no interfaces, there were no graphic interfaces for computers at this time. Nothing that a public audience would understand as, first of all, understand what a computer is, and then understand what a display might look like for a computer then. So they spent a lot of time trying to understand, try to speculate and imagine, and then create as a special effect what those interfaces might look like. So all of these displays, they still sort of work today. And I find this quite fascinating that even before these things were invented, before anyone had, a computer that could show graphics, right now these might seem like, oh, well, that's just a computer display with the graphics on it. But this was before there were computer displays with graphics on them. So the special effects team had to try to imagine what these might look like. Or even something like what we're doing right now. So this didn't exist at the time, being able to have a telephone call with someone over video chat. So them imagining something that was just barely possible to imagine in a time when not every home had a telephone. And now they're trying to say like, well, it's going to be video in the future. And so them really pushing these ideas and essentially playing them through, working on the ideas through the film. Or this is one of my favorite examples. What would it be like to go to the bathroom in zero gravity? So another thing that people probably didn't think about a whole lot, but they had to work through and understand and it makes the film seem that much more realistic by putting in these sort of very everyday, very common kinds of experiences that people might have to have in space. Another example that I want to share with you. So don't play this film right now. I just want to say a couple things about it. So this is from the film The Dark Knight. So this is the Batman film in 2008. What I find as another example of this kind of relationship between new ideas and science fiction and existing technology. This is a very interesting kind of prototyping of an idea that a lot of people have been talking about, especially in the field of ubiquitous computing. So a world in which there are lots and lots of sensors. What are some of the issues and consequences, and what are the ways in which you can actually communicate and share what those issues and consequences of a world with lots of sensors, what those issues might be, I think happens quite effectively in this just sort of short sequence in the film The Dark Knight. So I'll just set it up just a little bit. There's a moment in the film, Batman is really trying to, having a difficult time catching the Joker. And so he builds this technology that allows him to use everyone's cell phones as a way to see everything in the world. So it's like as if Batman has a video camera everywhere, so he can use that to hunt down where the Joker might be. And what the film's sequence gets into is not so much the technology as the social implications of a world where essentially one person can listen into and see the entire world. So if you want to go ahead and show that clip, now would be good.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Beautiful, unethical, dangerous. You've turned every cell phone in Gotham into a microphone.
And a high-frequency generator receiver.
You took my sonar concept and applied it to every phone in the city. With half the city feeding you sonar, you can image all of Gotham. This is wrong.
I've got to find this man, Lucius.
At what cost?
The database is null key encrypted. It can only be accessed by one person.
This is too much power for one person.
That's why I gave it to you. Only you can use it.
Spying on 30 million people isn't part of my job description.
This is an audio sample. If he talks within range of any phone in the city, you can triangulate his position.
I'll help you this one time. But consider this my resignation. As long as this machine is at Wayne Enterprises, I won't be.
When you're finished, type in your name.
So you hear there that what I find, again, just to repeat, very interesting about this is that this issue of the consequences of a world of ubiquitous sensors, of someone being able to listen in, or possibly all of us behaving as kind of sensors in a way, through our cell phones or through cameras or whatever, through our emails, it doesn't matter what. The consequences are worked out, in my mind, much better through that one sequence in The Dark Knight than they are even in sort of philosophical debates about it. So I think that it's a very impactful visual story about this consequence. And it combines so many things in one moment that it helps you to think beyond the very typical kind of just discussions about this. The other thing that I want to point out with this sequence in this film is that it's also something that this apparatus, this array,